Hello everyone. This video is just going to be what I would call a sport pilot supplement. So this video intends to describe a little bit about what's different if you wanted to pursue a sport pilot license versus a private pilot license, and also what if you wanted to fly a light sport aircraft when you're already licensed to fly something else. This is in the FARS, part 61, of course. Subpart J has to deal with sport pilots, and they talk about things like, I want to operate a sport aircraft. So what do I need to do that? Now, you'll notice that one of the big things about sport pilot is you do not need a medical certificate. However, if you have a medical certificate, you can still operate a light sport aircraft. If you do not have a medical certificate, you can use a U.S. driver's license as your medical, as long as you comply with any limitations on that driver's license. They'll tell you what can you operate. Basically, you can operate a light sport aircraft if you have a sport pilot license or higher in the appropriate category and class. And if you don't have any of those things, then there's the only things that you can operate would be balloons and gliders, which is kind of standard. They tell you what are the limitations if you're using a driver's license. Basically, you have to adhere to any limitations on that license. How old do you have to be? Just like everything else, 17 to license, 16 to solo. You have to be able to read, write, speak, and understand English, of course. What tests do you have to take? Just like everyone else, there's a knowledge test, and then there's a practical test. What kind of things do you need to know? All the standard stuff. What do you have to be proficient in? And then what aeronautical experience do I need? Now, all of the private pilot licenses require 40 hours of flight time. The sport pilot requires 20. Now, for the private pilot, it's 40 hours, 20 of it dual, 10 solo. But for the sport pilot, it's 20 hours, 15 dual, 5 solo. So if you look at the various categories, such as an airplane, in addition to those big breakdowns of the 15 and the 5, you need 2 hours of cross-country flight training, 10 takeoffs and landings to a full stop at an airport, 1 cross-country solo flight of at least 75 nautical miles total distance, the full stop landing and minimum of 2 points. So basically you flew somewhere and back. And 1 segment consisting of a straight line distance of at least 25 nautical miles between takeoffs and landing. 2 hours of flight training with an authorized instructor in the preceding 2 calendar months before this test. Everyone else, it's 3 typically. And let's say you wanted to get something fun like a gyro rating. It's, again, 20 hours of time, 15 dual, 5 solo, 2 hours of cross-country flight training, 10 takeoffs and landings at an airport, 1 solo cross-country flight of at least 50 nautical miles total distance with a full stop landing, a minimum of 2 points. So basically 25 miles out and back. 2 hours of flight training within the 2 calendar months preceding your test date. So that's pretty basic. There are some other categories. Guess what? They all have about the same kind of a thing. What are the privileges? Basically, if you have a sport license, you can operate a light sport aircraft currently with up to 1 passenger. There's a chance that later this year that might change, but for the moment it's up to 1 passenger. And you cannot be PIC of an aircraft that's carrying things for hire, for compensation or hire, in furtherance of a business while carrying more than 1 passenger, at least for now, at night. That's another big limitation. Class A airspace, you wouldn't get most light aircraft up there anyway. In B, C, and D airspace, if you don't have an additional endorsement, or if you already had a license, a private pilot and something else, you're already covered because you know how to use the radio. You can't go outside the United States because your license isn't recognized. You can't demonstrate an aircraft to a prospective buyer if you're a salesperson. You cannot engage in a passenger carrying airlift sponsored by a charity, and you can't go above 10,000 feet or 2,000 AGL, whichever is higher. You cannot fly with less than 3 miles visibility and without reference to the ground. So to summarize your limitations, you need 3 miles visibility, you need to be able to see the ground, and you can't fly at night. Other than that, your privileges are pretty much the same as a private pilot, or at least they could be. Is my sport pilot certificate issued with aircraft category and class ratings? The answer is no. You basically get a sport certificate and then they add endorsements onto that. So the next question says, how do I obtain privileges to operate an additional category class of sport aircraft? And basically what you're going to do is you're going to receive an endorsement from an instructor saying that you meet the requirements, and you will complete a proficiency check. Now you might say, well, what the heck is that? A proficiency check is essentially a check ride, but instead of going to a designated pilot examiner, you can just go to any old flight instructor. So, well, I should say any old properly rated flight instructor, that is. You don't have to find a DPE, which can be a challenge if you're doing something like a gyroplane, because at the moment we have 6 of those nationwide. You train with one person, they sign you off, you test with another person. It's the same test no matter who's given it. At the end of that, if you successfully complete the test, you will get an endorsement from the instructor who completed the proficiency check, and then you will get stuff added to your license by the FAA. Then they ask, how do I obtain privileges to fly in controlled airspace? And basically you got to get some training, and then they have specific endorsements to operate a light sport aircraft, and that's based on airplanes with different speeds. Okay, so let me summarize real quick. If you're getting a sport pilot license, you will need 20 hours of total time, 15 dual, 5 solo, and there's a couple little breakdowns after that. You will have to take a knowledge test. You will have to go to a designated pilot examiner, and once that is done, you will get a sport pilot license, and you will have the applicable endorsement on that license. If you are already licensed to fly something at the recreational pilot level or higher, and you want to add something new, like let's say you want to add gyroplanes, all you have to do is find an instructor, train, have that instructor sign you off to go get tested. You take a proficiency check with another instructor. They do an oral exam, they fly with you, and at the conclusion of that, they sign off your logbook, they send the paperwork to the FAA, and congratulations, now you're rated to fly a gyroplane, for example. What are the limitations? You do not need a medical certificate. You can fly with a U.S. driver's license. You must have 3 miles visibility and visibility to the ground and during the day. So those are your flight limitations. And of course, you can't do stuff for hire for the most part. And you can take up to 1 passenger currently. So I hope this is helpful, and we will see you around.